The cowboy loved her even before she arrived, a mail-order bride who changed his whole life. Elias Turner lived alone on a quiet ranch far from the busy towns. His land was wide and open, with dry grass fields that moved gently when the wind passed through. Every morning, he woke up early, fed his horses, checked the fences, and worked until the sun went down. His life was simple and steady, but it was also lonely. Elias was not a man who spoke much. He kept his thoughts to himself and did his work without complaint. People in the nearby town respected him, but no one knew him deeply. He had no family left, and no one waited for him at home. When the day ended, the silence in his house felt heavier than the long hours of work. One evening, after finishing his chores, Elias sat at his wooden table. A small oil lamp flickered beside him. In his hands was a letter, one he had already read many times. The letter was from Clara Whitmore. She was a school teacher from the East. A few months ago, Elias had done something unusual, something he never thought he would do. He had placed an advertisement for a mail-order bride. At first, he was unsure. It felt strange to ask a stranger to share his life. But the quiet nights had become too long and the emptiness too real. Clara had been the only one to reply. Her first letter was polite but honest. She wrote about her life in a small town where she taught children how to read and write. She said she wanted a new beginning, something different from the life she had always known. She did not write fancy words. Instead, her words were simple, kind, and full of truth. Elias remembered the first time he read her letter. He had expected something formal and distant, but Clara's words felt warm, almost like a quiet voice speaking directly to him. Over time, they exchanged more letters. Clara wrote about her love for books and learning. She shared small stories about her students and how she enjoyed helping them understand the world. She also spoke about her hopes, how she wished for a life where she could feel useful, where she could build something real with someone who valued honesty. Elias, who was not used to writing much, tried his best to reply. His letters were shorter, but they were sincere. He told her about the ranch, about the land, and about the simple life he lived. He did not try to impress her. He just told the truth. And Clara appreciated that. As the weeks passed, something changed inside Elias. He began to look forward to her letters. Every time the town's mail arrived, he would quietly hope to see her name. When he read her words, the silence in his house did not feel so heavy anymore. Now, Clara was coming. Her last letter said she would arrive by train in a few days. She wrote that she felt both nervous and hopeful. She had never traveled so far before. She did not know what to expect, but she trusted the choice she had made. Elias folded the letter carefully and placed it back on the table. He leaned back in his chair and looked around his small home. For the first time, he noticed how empty it looked. The walls were plain, the furniture old, and the rooms quiet. He stood up and walked slowly through the house. "This place should feel like a home," he said softly to himself. The next morning, Elias woke up earlier than usual. Instead of starting his usual work, he began cleaning. He swept the floors, dusted the shelves, and fixed things he had ignored for years. He repaired a loose door hinge and even washed the windows until they were clear. Later that day, he rode into town. At the general store, Mrs. Dillard watched him with curiosity. She had known Elias for years, and she had never seen him like this. "Buying new things, Mr. Turner?" she asked with a small smile. Elias nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He bought simple items, new curtains, a fresh tablecloth, and a few small decorations. Nothing fancy, but enough to make the house feel warmer. Mrs. Dillard smiled kindly. "She must be very special." Elias paused for a moment. He did not know how to answer that. "I think she is," he said quietly. On his way back to the ranch, Elias noticed the open land around him. The sky was wide and clear, and the wind carried a soft, steady sound. For years, this land had been his only companion. But now, he imagined sharing it with someone else. Someone who would sit with him in the evenings. Someone who would bring life into the quiet rooms. Someone who had already, without even knowing him fully, made his world feel less empty. That night, Elias sat on his porch and looked at the stars. He held Clara's letter in his hand again. He had never met her. He did not know her voice or how she smiled in person. But her words had reached him in a way nothing else had. And for the first time in many years, Elias Turner felt something new in his heart. Hope. Clara had not yet arrived, but somehow she had already begun to change his life. The days before Clara's arrival did not feel normal to Elias Turner. Time moved slowly, yet every moment felt important. For the first time in years, he was not just working to pass the day, he was preparing for someone. Each morning he woke up with a clear purpose in his mind. After feeding the horses and checking the land, he would return to the house and look around, as if seeing it for the first time. He noticed every small detail, the worn-out chair, the dusty shelves, the quiet corners that had been ignored for too long. "This won't do," he said softly one morning. He began fixing things one by one. He repaired the broken step at the front porch. He tightened loose nails in the wooden walls. He even moved the furniture around, trying to make the space feel more open and welcoming. It was not perfect, but it was different, more alive. One afternoon, Elias walked out to the empty patch of land beside his house. He stood there for a long moment thinking. Then he picked up a shovel. By evening, he had started a small garden. He was not an expert, but he remembered Clara once writing that she liked flowers, so he planted a few seeds and hoped they would grow. It was a small effort, but it meant something to him. At night, after all the work was done, Elias would sit by the lamp and read Clara's letters again. Her words felt even more real now. In one letter, she had written about how she enjoyed simple evenings, reading, writing, or just sitting quietly. In another, she spoke about her students and how she believed kindness was the most important thing a person could give. Elias thought about those words often. He wondered if she would like the ranch. He wondered if she would feel comfortable here. He wondered if he would be enough. These thoughts were new to him. He had never worried about such things before. But now they stayed in his mind, quietly shaping his actions. A few days before Clara's arrival, Elias rode into town again. The town looked the same as always, dusty roads, small shops, and familiar faces. But Elias felt different walking through it. At the general store, Mrs. Dillard greeted him with a knowing smile. "You're back again," she said. "Still preparing?" Elias nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He picked up a few more items, fresh coffee, some sugar, and a new blanket. He hesitated for a moment, then added a small book to his purchase. It was simple, but he thought Clara might like it. Mrs. Dillard watched him kindly. "You seem happier," she said. Elias thought about that. He wasn't sure how to explain it. "I think I'm just looking forward to something," he replied. As he left the store, a few townspeople noticed him. Some smiled, some whispered quietly. News about the mail-order bride had already spread. But Elias did not mind. For once, he wasn't focused on what others thought. On his way back, he stopped near a quiet hill. From there, he could see his ranch in the distance. The house looked small, surrounded by open land and endless sky. He imagined Clara standing there, looking at the same view. Would she find it beautiful? Or would she feel lost? The thought stayed with him as he rode home. That evening, Elias worked longer than usual. He cleaned the kitchen, arranged the table, and placed the new blanket neatly on the bed in the spare room. He paused for a moment, then shook his head slightly. "No," he said. He moved the blanket to his own room instead. If Clara was coming to be his wife, then this would be her home too, not just a guest room. It was a small decision, but it meant something important. Later that night, Elias sat outside on the porch. The sky was clear, filled with stars that stretched endlessly above him. The air was calm, and the land was quiet. He held Clara's latest letter in his hand. She had written about her journey. She said she would arrive soon, and though she felt nervous, she also felt hopeful. She trusted that things would work out. Elias read those words slowly. He understood that feeling. For years, his life had been steady but empty. Now, everything felt uncertain, but in a good way. He was not afraid of the change. He welcomed it. The next morning, Elias woke up earlier than ever before. He dressed carefully, choosing his cleanest shirt. He even trimmed his beard and brushed his hat. It felt strange, but also right. As the sun rose, casting soft light over the land, Elias stood outside his house and looked around. Everything was ready. The house was clean. The work was done. The waiting was almost over. He took a deep breath. Clara was no longer just a name in a letter. Soon, she would be here. And as Elias Turner stood there in the quiet morning, one thought stayed clear in his mind. He was not just preparing his home anymore. He was preparing for a new life. The morning Clara was set to arrive felt different from any other day. Elias Turner woke up before sunrise, even though he had barely slept. His mind had been full of thoughts all night. Today, everything would change. He dressed carefully, choosing his cleanest clothes. He brushed the dust off his boots and adjusted his hat more than once. It was not like him to worry about such things, but today was not a normal day. After checking on the horses, he saddled one and began the ride to town. The journey felt longer than usual. As Elias rode across the open land, the sky slowly turned from soft gray to bright blue. The wind moved gently, and the world seemed calm. But inside him, there was a quiet nervousness he could not ignore. He had read Clara's letters many times. He felt like he knew her in some way. But meeting her in person was different. What if she didn't like the ranch? What if she found him too quiet? What if everything felt wrong? Elias pushed those thoughts aside. He reminded himself of her words, kind, steady, and full of hope. "She's coming because she believes in this," he said softly. When he reached the town, it was already a little busy. A few people stood near the train station, waiting for passengers to arrive. The sound of distant chatter filled the air. Elias tied his horse nearby and walked toward the platform. He stood there quietly, his hands resting by his sides, his eyes fixed on the tracks. Then, in the distance, he heard it. The train whistle. It echoed across the land, growing louder with each passing moment. Soon, the train appeared, moving steadily toward the station. Smoke rose into the sky as the wheels slowed down with a long, heavy sound. Elias felt his heart beat a little faster. The train stopped. Passengers began stepping down one by one. Some carried bags, others greeted family members waiting for them. The platform slowly filled with movement and voices. Elias watched carefully. Then he saw her. Clara Whitmore stepped down from the train with a small suitcase in her hand. She paused for a moment, looking around at the unfamiliar place. The wide land, the quiet town, it was very different from where she had come from. She looked exactly as Elias had imagined, and yet not at all. She was simple in appearance, dressed neatly but without anything fancy. Her face showed both nervousness and quiet strength. Her eyes moved slowly, taking in everything around her. Elias took a step forward. For a moment he hesitated, then he walked toward her. "Miss Whitmore?" he said gently. Clara turned toward him. Their eyes met for the first time. "Yes," she replied softly. "Mr. Turner?" Elias nodded. "Yes, I'm Elias." There was a short silence. Not an uncomfortable one, but a quiet moment where both of them were trying to understand the reality of what was happening. Clara gave a small, polite smile. "It's good to finally meet you." Elias returned the smile, though his was more subtle. Yes, it is. He reached for her suitcase. Let me carry that. Thank you, she said. They began walking toward his horse. The noise of the station faded behind them, replaced by a calmer silence. Clara glanced around as they walked. It's very open here, she said. Elias nodded. It is. It can feel quiet at first. Clara looked at the sky, then at the land stretching far into the distance. I think I'll get used to it. There was something in her voice, uncertain, but also willing. Elias noticed that. When they reached the horse, Elias helped her carefully. He made sure she was comfortable before starting the ride back. The journey to the ranch began in silence, but it was not empty. The sound of the horse moving along the path, the wind brushing through the fields, and the soft rhythm of the ride created a calm feeling between them. After a while, Clara spoke. The journey was long, she said, but I'm glad I came. Elias looked ahead, then replied, I'm glad you did too. They exchanged a few more simple words about the train, the weather, and the land. Nothing deep, nothing complicated, but every small conversation made things feel a little easier. As they rode further away from town, the land became quieter. The ranch slowly came into view in the distance. Clara noticed it. That's your home? She asked. Yes, Elias said. She looked at it carefully. It was simple, surrounded by open land and sky. It looks peaceful, she said. Elias glanced at her. I hope it will feel that way to you. Clara smiled slightly. I think it will. When they finally arrived, Elias helped her down from the horse. Clara stood still for a moment, looking at the house, the land, and the wide sky above. This was her new life. Elias stood beside her, unsure of what to say. Then Clara turned to him. It's different from what I've known, she said honestly, but it feels right. Elias felt something settle in his heart. Good, he said quietly. They walked toward the house together. The door opened, and Clara stepped inside. She looked around, the clean space, the small details, the effort that had been made. You did all this? She asked. Elias nodded. I wanted it to be ready. Clara smiled, a little more warmly this time. Thank you, she said. And in that moment, something simple but important began. It was not perfect, it was not sudden, but it was real. Two strangers, brought together by letters and hope, were now standing in the same place, ready to begin something new. And as the sun slowly moved across the sky, Elias Turner realized something quietly powerful. She was no longer just a part of his future. She was now part of his life. The first few days on the ranch were quiet but not empty. Clara Whitmore slowly began to learn the rhythm of her new life. Everything felt different from the world she had left behind. The mornings were earlier, the land was wider, and the silence was deeper. But there was something peaceful about it too. Each day she woke up to the soft light of the rising sun. She could hear the horses moving outside and the wind passing gently through the fields. It was not the busy sound of a town. It was calm and steady. Elias gave her time. He did not rush her or expect too much. He showed her small things, one step at a time. He showed her where things were kept in the house, how the water was drawn, and how the land worked. Clara listened carefully. She asked questions, and Elias answered in his quiet way. At first, their conversations were simple. Would you like tea or coffee? Coffee is fine. Did you sleep well? Yes, I did. But slowly, those small talks began to grow. One evening, Clara sat near the window with a book in her hand. The soft light of the sunset filled the room. Elias walked in after finishing his work and paused for a moment. You like reading, he said. Clara looked up and smiled. Yes, it makes the world feel bigger. Elias nodded. I suppose it does. There was a short silence, but this time it felt comfortable. Clara closed her book. "Would you like me to read something aloud?" Elias hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right." She began to read in a calm, gentle voice. The words filled the room in a way Elias had never experienced before. The house no longer felt quiet, it felt alive. From that evening on, it became a habit. After dinner, Clara would read, and Elias would listen. Days passed, and Clara started to make small changes around the house. She placed flowers in a jar on the table. She arranged things neatly and added little touches that made the space feel warm. The ranch was still the same, but it felt different, more like a home. Elias noticed everything, even if he didn't always say it. One morning, Clara stepped outside and saw the small garden Elias had planted before she arrived. "You did this?" she asked, surprised. Elias nodded. "I wasn't sure what you'd like, but I thought flowers might be nice." Clara looked at the tiny plants, just beginning to grow. "They're perfect," she said softly. That simple moment stayed with both of them. As time went on, Clara also began to help in her own way. She kept the house in order, cooked meals, and even started teaching a few children from nearby families when they visited. Her presence brought something new to the ranch. Not just activity, but purpose. Elias found himself smiling more often. He spoke a little more. The quiet man who once lived alone was slowly changing, without even realizing it. One evening, after a long day, they both sat on the porch. The sky was painted with soft colors as the sun went down. The land stretched endlessly before them, calm and still. Clara looked out at the horizon. "It's beautiful here," she said. Elias nodded. "It always has been." Clara turned to him. "I think it just needed someone to share it with." Elias looked at her, then back at the land. Maybe she was right. For years, he had seen this place as just land, something to work on, something to live on. But now, it felt like something more. It felt like a life they were building together. There were still moments of uncertainty. They were still learning about each other. Sometimes they were quiet, sometimes unsure of what to say. But that was all right. They were patient. They did not rush. They simply let things grow, just like the small garden outside. One night, as the stars filled the sky, Clara spoke softly. "When I first read your letter," she said, "I didn't know what to expect. I just hoped for a kind life." Elias listened carefully. "And now?" he asked. Clara smiled gently. "Now I think I've found it." Elias felt a quiet warmth in his chest. "I wasn't sure either," he admitted, "but I believed, somehow, that this could work." Clara looked at him. "You believed before we even met." Elias nodded slowly. "I did." There was a peaceful silence between them. The wind moved gently, and the night felt calm and endless. In that moment, both of them understood something simple but powerful. Their story had not begun when Clara arrived. It had begun the moment two people chose to trust, to hope, and to take a chance on something unknown. And now, step by step, day by day, they were turning that hope into a real life, together.